Hi everyone. I didn't have very many people show up to the review today, so I thought that I would just go through it with you guys in a recording. There's a few double up questions, so I'm just going to skip the similar problems and leave those for you guys to do. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first problem is give a pair of corresponding angles, a pair of alternate exterior angles, and a pair of alternate interior angles. Okay, so part A, it says corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that when you put the lines on top of each other, they're going to lie in the same spot. So if I were to take line G and lie it on top of line H, I can see that 6 and 8 would lie on top of each other. So corresponding angles, for an example, I'm going to use angle 6 and angle 8. You could use different angles as long as they lie on top of each other if you were to put the two lines on top of each other. Okay? So alternate exterior angles. Okay? So if I have alternate exterior angles, I have 5 is on the outside of line G, okay? And then if I look at line H, I need one of the angles on the outside of this line, and it needs to be alternate, so it needs to be across from it, okay? So an example of an alternate exterior angles would be 5 and 4, okay? So angle 5 and angle 4 are examples of alternate exterior angles. Now, alternate interior angles are the same type of concept, except for we're in between the two lines. So in between these two lines, if I look at if I have angle 6 and angle 3, they're on alternate sides of line A, and they're interior to line G and line H. So 6 and 3 are examples of alternate interior angles. Okay. You can give different answers as long as you're showing that you understand what the differences between corresponding angles, alternate exterior angles, and alternate interior angles are. Okay. So let's go on to the next problem. This problem is exactly like the last one that I just did, so I'm going to go ahead and skip it and move on to problem 3. 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal as shown below. Okay, so suppose the measure of angle 7 is 81 degrees. Okay, so there's angle 7, they tell us it's 81 degrees. I need to know the measure of angle 2 and the measure of angle 4. So here's 7, angle 2 is there, okay? So if I were to take this line and lie it on top of this line, I can see that angle 7 would lie on top of 3, okay? So they would be corresponding angles, all right? So corresponding angles are equal, therefore I know that the measure of angle 3 is 81 degrees because they're corresponding. Now, I'm asked to find the measure of angle 2. If you look at 2 and 3, they would form a straight line when I put them together. Therefore, when adding these two angle measures together, they should equal 180 degrees. So if I take 180 degrees, subtract the measure of angle 3, which is 81 because it's corresponding to angle 7, I would get the measure of angle 2. Okay, so if I take 180 minus 81, I get 99. Okay, now it says find the measure of angle 4. Okay, now I found the measure of angle 2, and I need to find the measure of angle 4. If I look at 2 and 4, they are vertical angles. Vertical angles are across from each other when two lines form an X. Okay, so 2 and 4 are vertical angles, and vertical angles are congruent. Okay, therefore I know that the measure of angle 4 is 99. which is what we got for the measure of angle 2. Okay, now problem 4 is exactly the same type of problem, so I'm not going to go through that one. Number 5, okay, so in the figure below, O and N, these two lines are parallel to each other. It says find the values of X and Y. Okay, so I'm going to go with X first. Well, actually, you could go with either one of these, but I'm going to go with X first, because if I take the line O and lie it on top of line N, I know that 75 is going to lie right here, okay? And I know that this angle plus X gives me 180 degrees, okay? So if I take 180 degrees and subtract 75, I'm going to get X, okay? So 180 minus 75 is 105. Okay, now, very similar type of concept, except for I have this, I'm looking for the measure of angle Y, okay? So 75 and this angle are alternate exterior angles, and we know that alternate exterior angles are equal, okay? So if I have 75 equals all of this there. So 75 equals 3y minus 12. Okay, now I need to solve that for y. So the first thing you need to do is get your y value alone on one side. So I'm going to add 12 to both sides, because whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, so this is 87 equals 3y, okay, because those canceled. Now, to isolate y, I need to divide by 3, because this is really multiplication, and we need to do the opposite. So 87 divided by 3 is 29, okay? So 29 equals y. All right, I'm going to go ahead and check that. All right, let's go on to the next one. Now, this is the exact same type of problem as our last one, so I'm going to leave that for you guys to do. So here we are. In the figure below, H and L and J and K are parallel, okay? So these two lines must be H and L. I don't see that they're labeled there, but H and L are parallel and J and K are parallel. Find the values of X and Y. So here's X and here's Y, okay? So if I take this line, I'm going to call it line H, lie it on top of this line, I can see that 62 would lie right here, okay? So if 62 is there, I know 62 plus X equals 180 degrees, okay? So to find the value of X, I take 180 and minus 62, which is 118, okay? So that gives me the value of X. Now I need to know the value of this right here, this 4y minus 22 degrees, because I need to set this equation equal to something to solve for y. So if I take this line and lie it on top of this line right here, I can see that X would lie right here, okay? Or the other way I can see is 62 would be right here, all right? And then if I line that, move this down, I can see that 4y minus 22 equals 62. Okay. So 4y minus 22 equals 62. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and solve that. Hopefully you guys can see this. All right, so 4y minus 22 equals 62. Okay, so I'm going to solve that. Add 22 to both sides to isolate the y value. So I get 4y equals 84. And I'm going to divide that by 4. So then y equals 8 divided by 4 is 2, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so 21. So y equals 21. Okay? All right, moving on to the next one. This is very similar, same kind of setup. So I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to leave that for you guys to do. All right. So two lines S and T are cut by the transversal F as shown. Okay, so S and T are cut by the transversal F. Suppose the measure of angle 1 is 70 degrees. Okay, so angle 1 is 70 degrees. We see that angle 1 and 2 are vertical angles. Okay, if you guys don't know what vertical angles are, corresponding angles, or alternate interior angles or alternate exterior angles are, I highly suggest that you guys visit the example and the explanations to see what those are. Okay, so if I go down here to the explanation, they say vertical angles, congruent angles, okay, corresponding angles. I highly suggest you guys write down and give examples of what these are, okay? Very important information for your test. If you know what vertical angles, corresponding angles are, alternate interior angles and alternate exterior angles are, you guys should do fine on your test, okay? So because I hit the explanation, they give me a new problem, okay? So because I skipped it, they're going to count it as wrong. I could go back and do it, or number 10 is actually the same type of problem, okay? So if two parallel lines M and N are cut by a transversal W, as shown, the measure of angle 2 equals 145 degrees. Okay, we see that angle 2 and angle 3 are, and they're going to give us choices here, corresponding angles, vertical angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles. They're on the same side of the line, so they're not alternate. Okay, they're not vertical angles because they don't lie on the same line. They're corresponding angles because if I took this line and laid it on top of this line N, they would be right on top of each other. Okay, and since the lines M and N are parallel, angle 2 and angle 3 are congruent. Okay, so if they're congruent, they tell us the measure of angle 2 is 145 degrees. Therefore, the measure of angle 3 has to be the same as measure of angle 2, okay, which is 145. All right, now it says we see that angle 1 and angle 2 are they're vertical angles, okay, because we have two lines that cross, and these two angles are across from each other, so there are vertical angles. Thus, angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent because vertical angles are congruent. Therefore, the measure of angle 1 is also 145 degrees. Therefore, angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent, okay, because they have the same angle measure. We also see that angle 1 and angle 3 are, so angle 1 and angle 3 are alternate because they're on opposite sides of the line. Okay. They're on opposite sides of the line, but they're on the outside of those two parallel lines, so they're exterior angles. The relationship between angle 1 and angle 3 is an example of the following rule. When parallel lines are cut by a transversal, alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay? All right. So let's go ahead and move on. So use the compass and ruler to construct the line parallel to the line L through the point P. Okay? So we want a line that's parallel to L through P. So the first thing you need to do is you need to draw a line from P through L. It should be at a slight angle, not like anything crazy, and you shouldn't try to get it perfectly perpendicular. If it's off to the side at a small angle, that's the easiest to work with. Okay, I'm going to draw my line. I'm going to exaggerate it. I want it big. Okay, then I'm going to take my compass and I'm going to place it at the point where the two lines cross, and then I'm going to set it to a little bit less, or right around half the distance from P to that point where it crosses the line. And then I'm going to draw an arc all the way through both lines. Then I'm going to take that same arc and draw another arc that looks exactly the same at P. Okay? Then I'm going to take the compass again and draw another arc starting where that arc crosses the line I drew through where the arc crosses the other line. Okay? And I'm going to draw an arc. Then I take that arc, place it at the second arc I drew, and draw where that arc crosses the other one I drew. Okay? Then I'm going to take my ruler, draw a line from P through where those two arcs cross, and draw a line. Okay? And I can see that these two look pretty, that they look parallel, so I'm going to assume I'm correct. All right, moving on to the next one. So this is the exact same as the last one I did. What I want you guys to remember is that you're only going to reset the size of your compass one time in between drawing. Okay? Let's move on to problem 13. Use the compass and ruler to construct the perpendicular bisector of the line segment AB. So here's AB. Okay? So what you need to do is take your compass. I'm going to put it at A, point A. I want to set it to a little bit bigger than half the length of AB. Okay? Then I'm going to draw a large arc. Okay? All right? Now do not reset the size of your compass. You want it to be the same. And then you're going to go to the point B, and you're going to draw another arc, very large arc, because we want them to cross. Okay? So then you're going to take your ruler and you're going to draw a line from the top point where those arcs cross to the bottom point where those arcs cross, and draw a line. Okay? And that is your perpendicular bisector of the segment AB. Okay? Moving on. So now we're going to start getting into proofs. We definitely need to have an understanding of what alternate interior angles are, alternate exterior angles, corresponding angles, and congruent angles means. Okay? So, you should also have a very firm grasp of what the transitive property is. The transitive property says if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. That is the transitive property, okay? We use that a lot in this, in our proofs, okay? So use the given information to prove that angle 8 is congruent to angle 1. Okay, they tell us that x is parallel to y. So I'm going to send that to the proof. So because these two lines are parallel, I can see that 8 and 1 are exterior angles. I can also see that they're alternate because they're on the opposite sides of this transversal that crosses between those parallel lines. And there's something special that I know about alternate exterior angles. Okay, so I can actually just say angle 8 is congruent to angle 1 because if I have parallel lines, then the alternate exterior angles are congruent. Okay, I have to hit validate. Okay, and then check. Okay, so that was a one-step proof. All right, this is very similar, one step. So use the given information to prove that x is parallel to y, except for that we are given angles this time instead of parallel lines. Okay, so I'm going to send this angle 3 is congruent to angle 6 to my proof. If I look at angle 3 and angle 6, they're interior angles and they're alternate because they're on the opposite sides of this transversal that crosses these parallel lines. So there's something special that I know about alternate interior angles. Okay, so I can say that x is parallel to y because the alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, if alternate interior angles congruent, then lines are parallel. Okay, so it's another one-step proof. Now the proofs are going to get a little bit more in depth. Okay, use the given information to prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. You are not allowed to use the transitive property for parallel lines. We can use the transitive properties for equal or congruent angles though. Okay, so they tell us that FE is parallel to GJ, and then they also tell us that FG is parallel to KH. Okay, they want us to show that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with these two parallel lines, EF and GJ. So I'm going to just send that to the proof. And because these two lines are parallel, angle 1 and angle 2 are alternate interior angles, and therefore they are congruent. Okay, because those two lines are parallel. So I'm going to say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Okay, make sure you're using this congruent symbol, this one. Don't use this equal, it won't give it to you. They want congruent. And this is if lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Okay, so angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Now, I know that FG and KH are parallel to each other. Okay, and since I know that these two lines are parallel, I know something about angle 2 and angle 4. Okay, angle 2 and angle 4 are alternate interior angles. Okay, so if lines, I can say angle 2 is congruent to angle 4 because they are alternate interior angles. If lines are parallel, then alternate interior angles are congruent. Same rule we used for that line 2 of the proof. Okay, so now that I know that angle 2 equals angle 4 and angle 2 equals angle 1, I can say that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 by the transitive property. Remember that? If A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C. And that's the transitive property. Okay? All right. So I know that there's a little bit more complicated one of these proofs. If you get it in your review and you don't know how to do it, please get a hold of me and I would love to go over it with you. Okay? So you guys have a